He built worlds from paper cutouts and stubborn dreams. Then a studio asked him to smile at the end. He answered with open letters, midnight screenings, and a war of edits. The suits wanted tidy. He wanted truth. You won't see Brazil the same way again. Stay tuned. Number 1. Terry Gilliam, the director who wouldn't color inside the margins. London had embraced Brazil in late '84. Now the American release ran through Los Angeles conference rooms, where notes spoke of clarity, closure, and a kiss that fixed everything. On paper, it worked. In person, it didn't. Universal's brass wanted the frown turned upside down. Test cards and previews whispered about confusion. Executives demanded trims, brighter music, cleaner edges. The version nicknamed Love Conquers All promised daylight in a world built for shadows. But then, the phones started ringing with a different kind of buzz. He took the fight public. Full-page ads, morning radio, late-night whispers. Critics and film students slipped into off-hours screenings across LA and New York. Reports say the applause felt like a verdict, and the word spread faster than memos. Here's the part people forget. Awards chatter began before a ticket was officially sold. When are you going to release my film? The Los Angeles film critics handed Brazil their top honors while it was still a ghost in America. That stung. Pressure mounted. Meetings stretched past midnight. The studio blinked. Christmas week, the director's cut reached U.S. theaters. The box office was modest, but the message was loud. He could win without surrendering. And the bill came due. Next time, the scale would explode. Number 2, Terry Gilliam, the man who turned award season into a crowbar. Winter '84 gave Brazil raves in London. Stateside, the film stalled in a maze of memos. Executives argued endings and tone. They wanted a sunlit goodbye. He kept pointing to the film's bruise. The working relationship curdled into silence, then into strategy. On paper, the impasse looked final. In person, it became a campaign. He stopped trying to win the room and started winning the chatter. Private off-hour screenings for critics and film students popped up in Los Angeles and New York, where applause arrived like a press release. Reports say the laughter landed on the dark jokes that notes had tried to sand down. From there, the silence did the talking. Columnists started asking why a finished, acclaimed film was missing from the marquee, while lesser titles coasted into Thanksgiving. 1985 to 2. A full-page open letter ran in Variety, addressed to the studio chief by name. The move changed the math. Suddenly, awards voters were seeing the director's version in classrooms and backrooms, then writing about it in December. The Los Angeles film critics stepped in with a sweep: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, before the film even had a U.S. release. That stung twice, once in the trades and once in the boardroom. But then, the hold cracked, and Christmas week delivered his cut to theaters. The box office wasn't a victory lap. It was proof of life. About 10 million domestic, a cult forming in real time, and a message etched in marquee bulbs. He could bend the system without bowing to it. The studio got its lesson. He got his precedent, and the town took notes, because when you win with leverage, everyone recalculates risk for the next green light. From there, the reputation hardened. Visionary, expensive, relentless, which brings us to the next chapter, when the scale ballooned, the fantasy swelled, and the ledger screamed back. Number 3, Terry Gilliam, the dreamer who outran the ledger. After Brazil, the town knew two things: he wouldn't cave, and his imagination traveled heavy. The next canvas was bigger, stranger, and loaded with handcrafted miracles. On paper, the pairing of fantasy and studio muscle looked inevitable. In person, it became a tug of war with calculators, Budgets breathed like bellows. Sets grew, then grew again. Scheduling turned into arithmetic nobody loved. Reports say, meetings started with enthusiasm and ended with spreadsheets. He chased spectacle the old way, build it, shoot it, stitch it into wonder, while the front office chased predictability. But then, the weekly cost reports started reading like warnings, and the whispers migrated from corridors to columns. Crew morale bent under the weather of corrections, fixes, contingency plans. The film kept inventing itself, one elaborate solution after another. Executives kept inventing thresholds, one no more after another. Classic Gilliam images bloomed across the lenses, baroque, romantic, defiantly impractical, and the balance sheet flinched. From there, the silence did the talking. The town began filing it under brilliant, risky, volatile. 4 Academy Award nominations, even as the backers called it a financial disaster. That contrast wrote the headline for him: Critical Prestige versus Commercial Whiplash. The studio got a cautionary tale to teach in Monday meetings. He got proof that the vision could still seduce voters, archivists, and midnight crowds. The partnership, though, felt scorched. Future greenlights would come with more rails, more oversight, more anxious tracking calls. And the bill came due. If he wanted to keep building worlds, he'd need to show he could navigate their world too. Which brings us to the pivot everyone forgets. The next film trimmed the sails, found a heartbeat inside a mainstream frame, and reminded Hollywood he could move audiences without detonating the balance sheet. Number 4. Terry Gilliam, the visionary, who learned to whisper in a crowded room. The new assignment wasn't a handmade cathedral of gears. It was a human story: pain, penance, late-night radio, New York sidewalks. He walked onto a studio lot with the memory of scorched bridges and the promise to pick them carefully this time. On paper, it looked like compromise. In person, it felt like oxygen. A grieving ex-shock jock, a haunted drifter, a quest that traded brass and leather contraptions for hearts that creak. He framed the city like a fable anyway, but he let the camera breathe on faces, not clockwork. Reports say the notes spoke gently now. Protect performance, guard tone, keep the magic grounded. But then, the set began to hum with something rarer than approval, a sense that audiences might actually follow this one home. He still staged visions, of course: moonlit bridges, a waltz through commuters' turn ballroom, a grail that might be grief with a handle. Yet he kept the frame disciplined, the rhythms legible, the running time inside fences. The studio remembered how to exhale. The crew felt a ship that could dock on time. Here's the part people forget. He didn't sand away his voice, he aimed it. 5 Academy Award nominations and a healthy domestic gross for proof. That ledger mattered. It bought back trust, phone calls returned, meetings that didn't start with fire drills. It told the town he could fuse tenderness to spectacle without detonating schedules. And it told him that intimacy could carry wonder just as well as machinery. The win reset the conversation: less unmanageable, more bankable with guardrails. Which brings us to the next experiment: a star-driven time-knot thriller that let him play in the system's backyard while bending its fences, and the return of box office thunder under a bruised winter sky. Number 5. Terry Gilliam, the time-knot smuggler inside the system. Winter '95. A studio thriller with prison gray and apocalypse graffiti. Bruce Willis, shaved and haunted. Brad Pitt, motormouth mayhem. A remake in spirit, not letter, built from paranoia, plague alarms, and memories that don't hold still. On paper, it was commercial. In person, it thrummed like a fever. He leaned into grime and ductwork, not chrome, into faces, not contraptions. He staged lunacy as logic, logic as delusion, and let the camera flinch where certainty should be. Notes came with guardrails: pace the middle, clarify ticks, protect stars. He tightened where it helped and refused where it hurt. But then, test audiences leaned forward, and the studio felt the tremor of a genre piece wearing an auteur's pulse. Marketing wanted clear lanes, time travel thriller, viral dread, 2 movie stars. He wanted the vertigo. Publicity found a compromise. Sell the hook, let the film do the rest. The budget stayed inside fences, the schedule held, and the editorial pathway never snapped in half. Reports say the set ran like a machine built from rust and intention, humming toward a winter window the studio actually liked. $168 million worldwide, and an Oscar nomination for supporting actress. That ledger changed the weather. Suddenly, he wasn't the fire drill. They were. He had delivered a hit without surrendering the crooked angles that make his frames breathe. The win bought back risk capital. Casting swings approved faster. Location asks granted. Late-night edits tolerated when they served dread. It also revived an old question. If he could bend the system like this, how far would he push on the next ornate vision? Here's the part people forget. Success inside the machine doesn't retire the rebel. It finances him. The doors reopened, the caution softened, and the appetite for wonder returned with a contract stapled to it. Which brings us to the long road of late-period dreams, handmade illusions, festival spotlights, and the stubborn chase after a myth that refused to stand still. Number 6. Terry Gilliam, the late-period illusionist who kept sneaking past locked doors. After the winter hit, came the stubborn dreamer again, stitching fantasies from practical tricks, painted backdrops, and faces that carried fables. He wasn't chasing a franchise. He was chasing a feeling, time folding, reality cracking, bureaucracy blinking. On paper, the industry wanted IP. In person, he kept building worlds that refused to be branded. Studios liked the safety rails. He liked the vertigo. Meetings arrived with guardrails, benchmarks, comps. He answered with sketches and storybooks, a craftsman out of time, arguing that imagination sells when the frame protects it. Reports say budgets stayed leaner now, sets more surgical, but the frames still bent toward wonder. But then, the market shifted to algorithms and 4-quadrant certainty, and a handmade dream had to fight for every Thursday slot. He kept the lens on pilgrims and tricksters, a traveling showman bargaining with the devil, a data clerk drowning in corporate static, a deluded squire chasing a knight across Spain. The themes rhymed. Individuals stuck in systems, reaching for impossible exits, and he filmed them with stubborn tenderness. Here's the part people forget. The smallness of the budgets didn't shrink the ambition. It sharpened it. Venice premiered The Zero Theorem. Cannes and Toronto finally screened The Man Who Killed Don Quixote in 2018. The screenings mattered, not for fireworks, for oxygen. Festival air gave the films context, curiosity, and critics who spoke fluent Gilliam. Audiences found them in midnight slots and repertory calendars. The town called it niche. He called it proof of life. The box office didn't roar, but the afterlife lingered. Panels, restorations, classrooms where students traced line work back to the old cutouts. Consequence? He secured the right to keep trying. Not carte blanche, not blank checks, just enough daylight to mount the next outlaw fable. The system couldn't quite domesticate him, and he couldn't quite quit testing its fences. Which brings us to the final turn. What the fights, the letters, and the midnight screenings actually bought, and what they cost, when you measure a career against the ledgers that tried to contain it. Number 7. Terry Gilliam, the architect of the pressure campaign. The film was finished, the room was not. Notes circled like searchlights, clarity, pace, uplift, shooting flares at the ending. He'd fought through preview cards and internal recuts. Now the battleground moved outside the gates. On paper, it read like insubordination. In person, it looked like strategy with a calendar. He aimed at two levers the studio respected: critics and awards. Midnight showings rolled through Los Angeles and New York classrooms, then slipped to guild friends and columnists. The legend grew in whispers, a great film trapped in a locked cabinet down the hall. But then, the optics turned. The story stopped being difficult to director and started being, why can't audiences see the version critics just applauded? He understood that attention is a currency. So he spent it loudly. A full-page open letter in the trades named The Boss, and the question, daring an answer. Radio hits and hallway screenings did the rest, converting curiosity into friction, friction into headlines, headlines into pressure. Here's the part people forget. Each unofficial screening moved the finish line for the official cut by a few yards. The ending is not negotiable. That sentence turned a creative dispute into a referendum. Critics voted with year-end lists. A major Los Angeles group voted with trophies before a proper release. Boards don't like being told what to celebrate, but they like missing the party even less. Negotiations thawed. Calendars shifted, and December delivered the director's cut to actual ticket buyers. The cash register didn't sing, but the precedent did. Leverage can outmuscle notes when the timing is surgical. Which brings us to how the town recalculated afterward, when budgets swelled, patience thinned, and every miracle on set updated the bill. Number 8, Terry Gilliam, the cartographer of competing endings. Inside the lot, editors stacked reels like arguments, shorter, sweeter, safer. Outside the lot, the legend grew. A director's cut with teeth, and a studio cut with a smile. On paper, multiple versions meant flexibility. In person, it meant two stories about the same story, and only one could own December. Preview cards pushed for clarity, less bruise, more bow. Executives circled a title that said it out loud: Love Conquers All. He circled an ending that didn't lie. The negotiation froze. So he flipped the timeline, seeded off-hours screenings for critics and students, and let appetite outrun approval. But then, award season started behaving like a distribution arm, and suddenly private viewings became public leverage. Newspaper ink did the rest. A full-page open letter in the trades named The Gate and The Gatekeeper. Radio hits frame the question with theater lobby urgency. Here's the part people forget. The discourse itself became the marketing, and the marketing became a dare. Will the studio release the version everyone is now whispering about? No, 1985 to 12/25. The director's cut opens in U.S. theaters. The cash register logged modest numbers, about 10 million domestic. The headlines logged something louder. A critics' sweep in Los Angeles before release, then year-end lists that treated the film as a victory for stubborn art. The Love Conquers All cut drifted into footnote status, a cautionary tale screened in editing bays. The director's version became the text, the object of study, the midnight favorite. Consequence? He proved a path. If the room won't move, move the room. Use critics as fulcrum, awards as lever, timing as torque. The studio learned that shelving a finished film can backfire when the calendar and the chorus align. He learned that leverage has a cost. Relationships singed, patience shortened, futures negotiated from a file labeled difficult. Which brings us to the reckoning. Add up the wins, the scars, and the legacy when the fight itself becomes part of the film. He weaponized attention, letters, critics, midnight rooms, to pry open a locked release. Studios recalibrated, his reputation calcified, visionary, volatile, and stubborn enough to win without yielding. The lesson endures. When systems demand tidy endings, craft a smarter pressure campaign and keep the bruise. Which cut taught you the most about power? directors, studio, or award season myth. Drop your take, then subscribe for more Hollywood battles.